Good morning. So, as the title says, I'm tired of waiting for things to happen. I think that when you go back, in my history, it kind of like makes sense for me to have like this attitude because I grew up in a religious environment, more specifically Christian, and there is this notion that like God will, not only provide, but He will guide like He guide you, and kind of like set things for you. And naturally, like the way that those things were taught is not just like don't do anything, just wait. Like you have to do your part. But I will say that in my later days, as a religious person, I think I kind of like I fell into a sense of complacency because I was kind of like just waiting. I kind of like stopped doing things. That also has to do with burnout. I think that like I know I'm young, to talk about burnout maybe, but when I was younger, even younger than I'm right now, like I have had these experiences where I was just tired, and it also has to do with mental illness. Like I'm bipolar, so when I'm depressed, it's really hard for me to kind of like get going. So there's like a mix of things, but I do observe that there was a certain point where I was kind of like doing my part. That was kind of like the thing, and after I left religion, I think that I went back into kind of like trying to make things happen on my own. But the thing is that there's like so many circumstances that you can control that kind of like you. I think we are all born into like different circumstances, and we are kind of like all tied to them. Like there's only so much that you can do to break free, and actually like there are people who do, but they tend to be kind of like the exceptions. And I think that there is like merit in their work, but there's also like merit of the circumstances of the things that happen that allow them to kind of to engage with things that way. But yeah, but that is something that I've been kind of like thinking about. Like you know what, like I'm tired of waiting for things to happen because it has to do with my fantasies as well. It's kind of like I dream of these scenarios, of these situations, and I'm kind of like waiting for something to happen for them to come true. But for example, right now that I'm pretty stable, I kind of like realize that I don't allow like the circumstances. But basically, what I'm kind of like seeing is that, the sense is they come and they go, and I don't even like necessarily want them to happen. It is a mix of like me seeing something and being like, oh, I want that, I like that, I want to make something like that happen, which can kind of like fulfill some type of need that I have. But it doesn't have to be like that. I don't have, doesn't have to be as magnanimous, as extreme as some of like these fantasies I have are. Like it can just be something much more simpler, something much simpler. And I don't really. I talked about this, like the other day when I was talking about my fantasies and how they must die. But basically, sometimes I don't feel like I'm in control. Like they kind of like control me in a way. I'm kind of like just living my life here, and they kind of like they come and they, it's kind of like these waves. They come and they, crash on the shore. Me being the shore, I guess. And I don't really know how to remove myself from the situation. And I don't know. I feel like there's this kind of like hopelessness that I feel sometimes when it comes to my fantasies. But I wish I didn't feel like that. I wish I could control my head. But I also know that you can't really control your head like that. So that is something that for me to kind of like keep in mind, because it's the thing about control and sand. Like the more you kind of like you hold it, like the more it kind of like escapes. So there's only so much I can do. So it's also something that it comes often in mindfulness, because there's this thing of like you sitting with your thoughts, not trying to push them away, not trying to change them, just you sit with them, and that is kind of like that's you. That's how you were doing things. So that is something that I kind of I'm struggling with. I think I've been struggling with this for the longest time, to be honest. It's not new, but it is, something that I feel like every day I'm getting better at handling things. I just like sitting with my thoughts without letting them kind of like take over, just, seeing them, observing them. And, some days are better than others. I'm in a really good place right now mentally, where it really does feel like, I'm in control. Maybe not in control, but that things are kind of like flowing in a really helpful way for me. And I'm basically I don't know, it feels easy at this point in time, and I worry that it's going to change and that it's not going to be as easy in the future. So that is something for me to consider. And I don't really know what exactly I don't know when things are going to change or if they're going to change, but I think I said this yesterday. I'm enjoying the ride. I'm enjoying this while it lasts. And also, I think that, a lot of things, it's not so much about like willpower, it's about habit. So, like I will kind of like keep, like this habits going, and I'm kind of like training myself. So even when things get bad, like they won't be like as bad as, they have been in the past because I've made progress. But the thing of like me waiting for things to happen, I'm trying to change this attitude. Also, I'm trying to kind of like push away some of these fantasies, because that is where I see the most of like this mentality in my head of like something's going to happen, and like this is going to happen, all these other things are going to happen as a consequence. So I'm trying to enjoy my life a little bit more, as it is, not as I wanted it to be or as I dreamed it could be. Like just where I am at right now, what are the things that can kind of like motivate me to keep going, without having to kind of like resort to fantasies. What are the things that kind of like they move me. And there's like a variety of answers. I think historically food has been one of those, but I've been trying lately, controlling my eating. I struggle with eating compulsion, so I'm trying to kind of like do better and not rely on food so much. So there are other things that they can kind of like they can mean something. So there's my writing, kind of like publishing my next book. There are tattoos, like next tattoo I'm gonna get. There are the school has been really I've been finding it like to be very motivating, like if when I conclude the assignments, the essays, everything I have to produce, for these classes. And I find that I feel very much I feel very fulfilled, I feel very validated. So that is also something for me to keep in mind. I don't know, maybe exercise could be something of that. I bought a new step simulator because the other one broke, and basically I'm going to get back to exercising. We kind of like got an app. I think I mentioned this, and it is like not as great as we wish it would be, and we're kind of like on this trial period. So like at a certain point, I'm gonna like lose like the progress I made and all that. But I am doing the exercises. They are the ones that you can do with chairs and what do they call them, bowl pads. Like the weights that you kind of like you use. So there's kind of like where I'm at. So yeah, so basically I want to kind of like focus on what is really happening, and I think like these things, they're kind of like happening, like they are within my control. So for example, maybe writing, I mean naturally, like right now I'm like in the middle of the school year, so I'm not really the middle, it's kind of like the beginning of the semester. So basically there is going because I want to be a good student, I really want to learn, I want good grades. So I am getting out of my way, going out of my way to kind of like study everything, to read everything. So for example, my writing is going to be a little compromised because I'm kind of like spending so much time with school stuff. But it doesn't have to be completely like I don't have to use all my time for that. I can kind of like find balance, and that's pretty much what I'm trying to find, balance between kind of like schoolwork and my writing. And I'm confident that I will figure it out. Basically, that's kind of like the thing, because I don't know the future, I don't know what's going to happen, but I trust myself to kind of like to have my best interest in mind. I trust myself to kind of like I don't know, to do what's right by me, so that is kind of like where I am at right now. As I said, I'm tired of waiting, and things, I think I've had different eras in my life. Like there's been eras where I was a little bit more complacent, as I said. There were eras where I was a little bit more active. Also, like there is something to be considered, is the fact that like not all effort is equal. Like so sometimes like I made like a lot of effort for something that didn't really pay off. So that I'm trying to also look at things and not feel like, oh, I wasted my time. Like no, I didn't know. I had to kind of like put myself out there and just throw it out at the wall and see what stuck. And some of the things, they didn't stick, and that's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with failing. Basically, like this is something that is kind of like I was gonna say that is a new notion to, for me, but like this has been kind of like the notion for the past 5 years. But when I was younger, I really was afraid of failure. I was really not only afraid, I was like terrified. Like the idea that I was failing. Sometimes like that rose me in place. Sometimes that prevented me from actually doing things because I was afraid that I was going to fail, and if you don't try, like you're not failing. So that is a mentality that I'm kind of like I've been kind of like pushing away from me for the past like decade. But easier said than done. I think that 18 was the age when I started kind of like dealing with these things. you know, like in terms of kind of like trying not to get overwhelmed by the possibility of failure. I think that 2016 when I was 18, like there was a lot of like failures that happened, a lot of things that didn't work out for me, and that was kind of like a reality check, like a reality shock, because I had to face the fact that I was not that some things were not going to happen, or at least like not the way that I expected, the way that I wanted them to. So that was, you know, the beginning of a journey, and it's a journey that it feels like right now I'm finally it's paying off, which is kind of sad because like a decade for me to get to this point, but you know it is what it is. You know, like I kind of like I'm doing my best, and I'm hoping that it is enough, and sometimes it won't be enough, but that's okay. You know, I think I've come to accept like the unfairness, because there are different types of unfairness. I think there are some that are more, you know, rooted in prejudice, and those like we can accept them, like you have to fight, you know, like the good fight to kind of like make things right. But some unfairness, like they are not, they just, it's not, they're not ideal, but they kind of like just, it's part of life. And I think I'm at a point where I'm no longer feeling so revolted, you know, so kind of like distraught by the fact that that is kind of like how things work. And I'm like at this point where I'm basically like, okay, this is the reality, like what can I do, you know, about, not about this, but like despite of this, you know, I focus on those. And I am very I'm happy with the results. I think that I'm at a point where I'm being more productive, mostly because I've come to accept things as they are. And I know that once again, like it feels like very complacent in a way, like we're not trying to change the world. And something that I've also, an idea I've been also kind of like toying with is the fact that like some things are not my responsibility, because I feel like sometimes I have in the past like put the weight of the world on my shoulders, and I have kind of you know expected that to you know I've kind of like I did that to myself, and then I was kind of like, you know, crouching. I was kind of like collapsed. The world collapsed on top of me because I couldn't handle it. I couldn't, you know, hold it. And you know there are things that, you know, I'm responsible for. There are things that, you know, like it's worth you kind of making effort. But there are things that, you know, like I don't know. I feel like there's a certain level of arrogance from my part to believe that you know, like I can do anything about that. So I'm just kind of like looking at things right now and being like, this is not my responsibility. This is not my responsibility. And I'm not talking about things that are directly connected, you know, to me, because you know, like that is something. Yeah, those things they're kind of like they have to do with me directly. I'm gonna be more active in them. But like stuff that's happening across the globe, you know, like in another continent, another country, you know, and I'm kind of like over here, you know, like I can't kind of like, you know, care. I can't save room for some of these things, make space in my head. And once again, like, this sounds bad when I say it, and a part of me still feels guilty about that, but right now I have to kind of like focus on what works for me and what makes sense, because otherwise I'm gonna lose myself, I'm gonna lose my grip, you know, in reality, and I can't have that, you know, like as I said before, I'm bipolar. I have to be really centered, really stable, and that means making choices. They are hard choices, they're selfish. And it's interesting because I never really necessarily been someone, because I feel like somebody, I've been reading about the Enneagram, and I think it's type 2 like doesn't want to be seen as selfish. I never really had, you know, an issue with that, to be honest, but I will say that there is something about you know, like feeling that I have a responsibility and that I'm not fulfilling my duties, like that does really affect me. But yeah, but in short, you know, like I really am tired of waiting. You know, I'm really tired, and when I say tired, I really mean it. Like it's kind of like almost exhausting. You know, sometimes I start thinking about, you know, these things, and I'm like, you know, I'm just like sighing basically. But yeah, like so I'm kind of like in a new era of my life, and that is an era where I am not waiting. I'm making things happen, but like reasonably. I'm not, you know, just throwing things out there and hoping for the best. Like there's some planning that's happening. There is some, you know, like I am planning. You know, I'm kind of like I'm looking in the future and trying to come up with, you know, like the best strategy, and you know, like work up from that there. So yeah, that's it. Bye.